The cargo bay of the Stellar Wanderer hummed with the familiar vibration of a ship pushing through hyperspace. Marcus Kane ran his calloused hand along the sealed containment units, double-checking the manifest one final time. 37 cases of archaeological equipment, enough protein synthesizers to feed a small colony, and one very expensive quantum dating device that probably cost more than his entire ship. Another day, another mysterious dig site, he muttered to himself, a habit he'd developed during his years of solo freight runs across the Outer Rim. The job posting had been unusually lucrative, enough to keep him flying for 6 months without taking another contract. The only catch was the destination, Kepler-4 to see, a world so remote it didn't even appear on most star charts. The navigation computer chimed softly, indicating their approach to the drop point. Marcus settled into the pilot's seat, his weathered face illuminated by the soft blue glow of the instrument panel. At 34, he'd been hauling cargo across the galaxy for over a decade, preferring the solitude of space to the complexities of planetary life. No commitments, no complications, just him, his ship, and the endless expanse of stars. The hyperspace tunnel collapsed around them, revealing a rust-colored world hanging against a backdrop of unfamiliar constellations. Kepler 440 to see looked like a dozen other worlds he'd visited, barren, windswept, and utterly uninviting. But as his ship descended through the thin atmosphere, Marcus caught sight of something that made him sit up straighter in his pilot's chair. Massive stone structures jutted from the planet's surface, like the bones of some colossal beast. Even from orbit, he could see they were clearly artificial, too geometric, too purposeful to be natural formations. The research station squatted nearby, a collection of prefabricated modules connected by enclosed walkways, looking incredibly fragile against the ancient monumentality of the ruins. Marcus set the Wanderer down on the designated landing pad with practiced ease. The station's airlocks cycled, and a small group emerged to greet him. Leading them was a woman who immediately captured his attention, not human, but humanoid, with skin that shifted between deep purple and midnight blue depending on the angle of the light. Her silver-white hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she moved with a fluid grace that suggested both intelligence and physical capability. "Captain Kane?" Her voice carried a melodic accent that made standard galactic common sound almost musical. "I'm Zara Vex, xenoarchaeologist. Thank you for making the journey out here." Marcus found himself momentarily speechless, struck not just by her exotic beauty, but by the intense curiosity that sparkled in her golden eyes. He'd encountered dozens of alien species in his travels, but something about Zara felt different, familiar, despite their obvious differences. "Just Marcus is fine," he managed, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting. When she took it, her skin felt surprisingly warm, and he noticed the way her bioluminescent markings brightened slightly at the contact. "Marcus." Then she said, her lips curving into a smile that seemed to light up her entire face, "I hope you don't mind staying for a few hours while we sort through the equipment. Professor Kett is eager to examine the quantum dating device before you leave." "No problem," Marcus replied, though he normally preferred quick turnarounds. Something about this place, or perhaps this woman, intrigued him. "Mind if I take a look around while you're busy?" "Those ruins look pretty impressive." Zara's expression shifted, becoming more serious. "Actually, that's probably not advisable. The structures aren't entirely stable, and there are unusual energy readings throughout the complex. We've lost to survey drones already." "Energy readings?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What kind of energy?" Before Zara could respond, an older alien approached them, tall, thin, with gray skin and large, dark eyes that spoke of great intelligence and equally great weariness. "Professor Kett," Marcus assumed, noting the way the other researchers deferred to him. Double quotes, "Our pilot," Kett said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "I trust the journey was uneventful." "Good. We have much work to do and little time to complete it." "Professor," Zara interjected gently, "I was just explaining to Marcus about the energy anomalies." Kett's expression darkened. "Yes, the anomalies. Captain Kane, I must ask that you remain near your ship. The ruins contain technologies we don't yet understand, and frankly, they appear to be designed to be unwelcoming to visitors. Marcus helped unload the cargo while Zara and her team sorted through the equipment. He found himself stealing glances at her as she worked, admiring the efficient way she moved and the obvious passion she brought to her research. When she caught him looking, she didn't seem annoyed. Instead, her bioluminescent markings would brighten, and she'd flash him another of those radiant smiles. "So what exactly are you hoping to find out here?" Marcus asked during a break, offering Zara a cup of coffee from his ship's galley. She accepted the drink gratefully, wrapping her long fingers round the warm mug. "The ruins are approximately 50,000 years old, built by a species we've designated the predecessors. They vanished completely from the archaeological record around the same time. These structures were constructed. Vanished how? War? Plague? Environmental collapse? That's what we're here to determine." Zara's golden eyes took on a distant look. "But there are legends among several species about a great crossing, a moment when the predecessors transcended physical existence entirely. Most scholars dismiss it as mythology, but the energy readings here suggest something extraordinary happened." As the afternoon wore on, Marcus found excuses to linger near Zara's work area. She was examining carved symbols on a stone tablet, occasionally inputting data into a portable scanner. Her concentration was absolute, but she seemed to welcome his presence, explaining her findings in terms he could understand. "These glyphs describe some kind of gateway," she said, pointing to a series of interconnected circles carved into the stone. "But the terminology is unusual. It's not describing physical travel from one place to another, but rather a transition between states of being, dimensional phases, perhaps, or evolutionary stages." Zara's voice dropped to an excited whisper. "Marcus, I think the predecessors discovered a way to transform themselves into pure consciousness to exist, beyond the limitations of physical form." A sudden tremor ran through the ground, strong enough to rattle the equipment. In the distance, one of the massive stone structures began to glow with an eerie blue-white light. The research team froze, all eyes turning toward the phenomenon. "Professor," one of the junior researchers called out, "the central spire is showing massive energy spikes." Ket's face went pale. "Everyone inside, now. Activate the station's shielding protocols." But Marcus couldn't look away from the glowing structure. As the light intensified, he could swear he heard something not sound exactly, but a vibration that seemed to resonate in his bones. Beside him, Zara stood transfixed, her scanner forgotten in her hands. "It's beautiful," she breathed, her own bioluminescence pulsing in harmony with the ancient light. The glow reached its peak and then suddenly cut out, leaving them in the planet's dim twilight. But in that moment of absolute darkness, Marcus felt something profound had awakened, both in the ruins around them and in the space between him and the remarkable woman standing beside him. As they finally headed inside the research station, Zara caught his arm. "Marcus," she said quietly, "I'm glad you're here. I have a feeling we're going to need someone with your particular talents before this is over." The way she looked at him made Marcus's heart race in a way he hadn't experienced in years. Whatever was hidden in these ancient ruins, whatever secrets the predecessors had left behind, he knew his life was about to change forever. The attack came at dawn, shattering the peaceful silence of the research station with the scream of energy weapons and the thunder of explosions. Marcus jerked awake in the guest quarters, his military instincts from years past flooding back. As he rolled off the narrow bunk and grabbed his sidearm through the small porthole, he could see dark figures moving between the ruins, their weapons casting deadly beams of crimson light. The station's emergency klaxons wailed as blast doors began sealing automatically, trying to protect the inhabitants from the assault. "Zara!" Marcus shouted, pulling on his boots as he ran toward the corridor. He found her emerging from her own quarters, her golden eyes wide with fear, but her movements steady and controlled. "Marcus, thank the void you're safe," she breathed, relief flooding her voice. "It's Captain Rylos and his mercenaries. They've been hunting us for weeks." "Who's Rylos?" Marcus asked, checking the charge on his blaster as another explosion rocked. "The station, a war profiteer who believes the predecessor technology can be weaponized," Zara explained, grabbing a portable data pad and shoving it into a field pack. He's been following archaeological expeditions across the sector, stealing any artifacts he thinks might have military applications. Professor Kett's voice crackled over the intercom system. All personnel to emergency stations. The outer perimeter has been breached. I repeat, we are under attack. Marcus grabbed Zara's hand, feeling the electric warmth of her touch even in the chaos. Where's the most defensible position? The communications array is shielded, but her words were cut off as a section of the outer wall exploded inward, showering them with debris. Through the smoking hole stepped a figure in battle-scarred armor, his weapon trained on them. Marcus didn't hesitate. He pulled Zara behind him and fired, his shot catching the mercenary in the shoulder and spinning him around. Move, now, they ran through the corridors as the station fell apart around them, emergency lighting casting everything in hellish red shadows. Behind them, Marcus could hear the methodical sweep of the attackers, their boots ringing against the metal decking. There's a maintenance exit that leads to the ruins, Zara said. Her breath came in short gasps as they sprinted toward the station's rear section. If we can reach the central complex, we might be able to hide in the underground chambers. They burst through the exit into the alien dawn, the planet's binary suns casting long purple shadows across the ancient stone structures. The ruins stretched before them like a labyrinth of hope and danger, their weathered surfaces still humming with residual energy from the previous night's display. This way, Zara whispered, leading him between towering monoliths covered in glyphs that seemed to shimmer and move in his peripheral vision. Despite the terror of their situation, Marcus found himself amazed by the architecture impossible angles that somehow felt perfectly natural, doorways that seemed to beckon them forward into mysteries beyond imagination. They paused behind a massive stone pillar, both breathing heavily. In the distance, they could see smoke rising from the research station, and the occasional flash of weapon fire suggested the battle was still raging. How do you know about these underground chambers? Marcus asked, noticing how Zara seemed to navigate the ruins with intuitive confidence. I've been studying the predecessors for most of my adult life, she replied, her fingers tracing the carved symbols on the pillar's surface. Their architecture follows principles that most species can't comprehend, but something about it feels familiar to me, like memories inherited from a dream. As they moved deeper into the complex, Marcus found himself studying Zara with new appreciation. In the research station, she'd been attractive and intelligent, but here among the ancient stones, she seemed to come alive in a way that took his breath away. Her bioluminescent markings pulsed with subtle rhythms that seemed to harmonize with the energy emanating from the ruins themselves. Zara, he said softly, catching her arm as they approached what appeared to be an entrance carved into the base of the central spire. Before we go underground, I need to tell you something. She turned to face him, her golden eyes reflecting the strange light that seemed to permeate everything in this place. What is it? I've been running freight across the galaxy for 15 years, Marcus began, surprised by his own vulnerability. I've seen more worlds than I can count, met people from dozens of species, but I've never felt. He struggled for the words. I've never felt the kind of connection I felt with you yesterday. Zara's expression softened, and she reached up to touch his face with her warm fingers. Marcus, among my people, we believe that consciousness recognizes consciousness across all boundaries, species, time, even dimensions. What you're feeling, what we're both feeling, it's not accident. Their lips met in a kiss that was both desperate and tender, a moment of perfect connection amid the chaos surrounding them. When they finally parted, Marcus could swear he felt something different, as if Zara's touch had awakened parts of his mind he'd never known existed. We should go, she whispered, though her hand lingered on his chest. The entrance chamber should provide us with temporary safety. The carved doorway led to a spiral staircase that descended into the planet's crust, the walls lined with the same glowing symbols they'd seen throughout the ruins. As they descended, the air grew warmer and seemed to thrum with barely contained energy. The power source for all of this must be incredible, Marcus observed, running his hand along walls that felt more like living tissue than carved stone. It's not a power source in any conventional sense, Zara explained, her voice echoing strangely in the narrow space. According to the texts we've translated, The predecessors learned to harness what they called consciousness energy, the fundamental force that gives rise to awareness itself. They emerged into a vast underground chamber that defied all architectural logic. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, supported by pillars that seemed to grow organically from the floor. In the center of the space stood a circular platform, surrounded by floating crystalline structures that pulsed with internal light. By the void, Marcus breathed. "What is this place?" "The Chamber of Transcendence," Zara whispered, her voice filled with awe. "The legends speak of it, but I never imagined." She approached the central platform with reverent steps, her scanner forgotten as she stared at the impossible beauty surrounding them. "Legends about what?" Zara turned to face him, her expression mixing excitement with deep sadness. "This is where they made the Great Crossing, where the entire predecessor civilization chose to abandon physical existence and become something more." "You mean they died?" "Not died, transformed, evolved. They found a way to exist as pure consciousness, unbound by the limitations of matter and energy." She gestured toward the floating crystals. "These structures are quantum processors, designed to facilitate the transition between dimensional states." A distant explosion reminded them of the danger above. Marcus could hear voices echoing down the stairway. Rylos's mercenaries had found their trail. "Is there another way out?" Marcus asked, checking his weapon's charge. "I don't think so." "But Marcus," Zara's voice took on an urgent tone, "the platform, according to the inscriptions, it's still functional. The gateway to transcendence is still active." Marcus stared at the alien woman he was rapidly falling in love with, beginning to understand the impossible choice she was contemplating. "You're talking about using it, about making the crossing yourself. It's what my people have dreamed of for generations," she said softly. "The chance to join the predecessors in their transcended state. But the legends also say that no alien species has ever survived the transition. The neural pathways required for consciousness transfer are unique to predecessor biology." The sound of boots on stone grew closer. They had perhaps minutes before Rylos's men reached the chamber. "What about humans?" Marcus asked, though he already suspected he knew the answer. "Unknown." Zara admitted, "Your species wasn't part of the galactic community when the predecessors vanished. There's no data about human neural compatibility with their technology." Marcus looked at the glowing platform, then at Zara's beautiful, frightened face. In the space of 24 hours, she'd become more important to him than his ship, his freedom, or his life itself. The thought of losing her to either Rylos's greed or an ancient death trap filled him with a determination he'd never felt before. "Then, I guess we're about to find out," he said, taking her hand and walking toward the platform. "Marcus, no, if the transition fails, you'll be destroyed completely. Not even death, you'll simply cease to exist." He squeezed her fingers gently, feeling the pulse of her alien blood beneath warm skin. "Zara, yesterday you told me that consciousness recognizes consciousness. If that's true, then maybe love can bridge any gap, even evolution itself." The first mercenary appeared at the chamber entrance, weapon raised. Marcus pulled Zara close, their hearts beating in synchronization as the ancient machinery around them began to respond to their presence. "Together?" he asked. "Together," she agreed, and stepped with him onto the platform just as the world dissolved into light. The platform beneath their feet began to pulse with increasing intensity, resonating with a frequency that seemed to vibrate through their very souls. Marcus felt Zara's hand tighten in his as the crystalline structures around them responded to their presence, casting shifting patterns of light across the chamber walls. "Fascinating," a voice spoke from the shadows, not one of Rylos's mercenaries, but something far older and more alien. "In 50 millennia, no organic beings have dared approach the Transcendence Gate." A figure materialized from the chamber's depths, tall and ethereal, with features that seemed to shift between solid matter and pure energy. Its form was vaguely humanoid, but composed of the same luminescent material as the floating crystals. "I am Elder Nyx," the being continued, its voice echoing with harmonics that human ears weren't designed to perceive. "I am the guardian of this sacred place, the last of my kind to maintain physical coherence in this dimension." Zara stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overwhelming her fear. "You're a predecessor? But the records indicate your entire species transcended 50,000 years ago." "Not all of us chose the Great Crossing," Nix replied, its form solidifying slightly as it focused on them. "Some remain to guide future seekers, though none have come until now. Tell me, young ones, do you understand what you approach?" The sound of approaching boots echoed from the stairway. Captain Rylos and his mercenaries were closing in. Their energy weapons would soon fill the sacred space with violence and death. "We understand enough," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the chaos approaching from above. "We know your people found a way to evolve beyond physical existence, and we know that no alien species has ever survived the attempt to follow." Elder Nix's attention shifted to Marcus with sudden intensity. "A human? How curious. Your species was not known to us during our corporeal existence. You represent an unknown variable in the equations of consciousness transfer, Guardian." Zara interjected urgently. "The beings pursuing us seek to weaponize your technology. They want to use the transcendence process to create instruments of destruction rather than evolution." The ancient being's form flickered with what might have been anger. "Impossible. The Great Crossing cannot be perverted into an instrument of harm. It is the ultimate expression of conscious growth, the abandonment of all material concerns in favor of pure understanding." Heavy footsteps resonated through the chamber as the first of Rylos's men appeared at the entrance. Captain Rylos himself followed, a scarred veteran with cybernetic implants covering half his face, his remaining organic eye burning with avarice. "How touching," Rylos sneered, his voice amplified by vocal modulators. "The pretty archaeologist and her pet human, playing with toys they don't understand." His weapon was trained on Zara, though his gaze kept shifting to the glowing platform. "Step away from the device. Professor Vex, my clients are very eager to examine your discovery." "Your clients will be disappointed," Zara replied, moving protectively closer to Marcus. "The transcendence technology can't be weaponized. It's designed to elevate consciousness, not destroy it." Rylos laughed, a harsh sound that echoed unpleasantly in the sacred space. "Everything can be weaponized, Professor. Antimatter was supposed to power starships. Instead, we use it to crack planets. Quantum entanglement was meant for communication. We turned it into the ultimate surveillance tool. Your ancient toys will serve the same purpose." Elder Nix stepped forward, its form brightening with indignation. "You speak of forces beyond your comprehension, flesh creature. The Great Crossing demands spiritual preparation, genetic compatibility, and neural architecture refined over millions of years of evolution. To attempt it without proper preparation is to invite complete annihilation." "Then we'll start with test subjects," Rylos replied coldly, gesturing to his men. "Fortunately, we have volunteers." Marcus felt Zara tense beside him, her bioluminescent markings flaring with emotion. He could see the impossible choice forming in her mind: submit to Rylos and watch her life's work become an instrument of genocide, or attempt the transcendence process and risk not only her own existence, but his as well. "There might be another option," Marcus said quietly, his eyes never leaving Rylos's weapon. "Guardian, you said no alien species has survived the crossing. What about humans working in partnership with other species?" Elder Nix's form shimmered with interest. "Partnership, explain." "The way I understand it," Marcus continued, his hand finding Zara's and squeezing gently, "consciousness recognizes consciousness. What if the process isn't about individual transcendence, but about shared evolution, two different neural architectures, supporting each other through the transition?" Zara's golden eyes widened as she grasped his meaning. "A bonded crossing. Marcus, that's never been attempted. The risk is worth taking," he finished, pulling her closer. "Zara, in the past day I've felt more alive, more complete, than in all my years wandering the galaxy. If we're going to face the unknown, I can't think of anyone I'd rather have beside me." "How romantic," Rylos snarled, his patience clearly exhausted. "Kill the human. Take the woman and the ancient. My employers can figure out how to make their technology cooperate." The mercenaries raised their weapons, but Elder Nix moved with impossible speed, its form expanding to shield Marcus and Zara. Energy bolts passed harmlessly through the Guardian's ethereal body, The choice must be theirs, Nyx declared, its voice resonating with power that made the chamber walls vibrate. For 50 millennia, I have waited for beings worthy of the Great Crossing. I will not allow their decision to be made by creatures motivated by greed and violence. Marcus felt the platform responding to their presence, the crystalline structures beginning to rotate in complex patterns around them. Ancient machinery, dormant for countless ages, awakened to assess the new supplicants for transcendence. Zara, Marcus said softly, his voice somehow audible despite the growing energy discharge around them. Whatever happens next, I want you to know that finding you has been worth every risk I've ever taken. She turned to face him, tears streaming down her face, her bioluminescence pulsing in rhythm with the ancient technology. Marcus, among my people, to share consciousness with another being is considered the ultimate intimacy. If we attempt this, crossing together, we'll be bonded in ways that transcend physical existence. I can't think of anything I want more, he replied, cupping her face in his hands. In any dimension, in any form of existence, I want to be with you. Their kiss was interrupted by the whine of charging weapons as Rylos's men prepared for another assault. Elder Nyx's form was beginning to fade, the effort of maintaining physical coherence while protecting them taking its toll on the ancient. Guardian, the process must begin now, Nyx warned, its voice growing distant. The transcendence machinery requires several minutes to complete the consciousness transfer. Once initiated, it cannot be stopped or reversed. Marcus looked into Zara's golden eyes, seeing his own determination reflected there. Together, she agreed, and they stepped hand in hand into the center of the platform. The world exploded into sensation as the predecessor technology engaged. Marcus felt his consciousness expand beyond the boundaries of his skull, touching something vast and warm and utterly alien. Beside him, Zara's awareness merged with his own, their thoughts and emotions flowing together like streams joining a river. Through their shared perception, they could sense Elder Nyx's approval, Rylos's rage, and something else, a presence vast and patient, waiting in dimensions beyond physical reality. The transcended predecessors were watching, evaluating whether these strange new supplicants were worthy to join their elevated existence. As the energy built to unbearable intensity, Marcus's last coherent thought was of gratitude for the journey that had brought him to this moment, for the remarkable woman whose hand he held, and for the love that was about to carry them beyond the boundaries of everything they had ever known. The universe dissolved into light, and Marcus Kane stepped willingly into the unknown. Existence exploded into something beyond sensation, beyond thought, beyond any category of experience Marcus had ever imagined possible. His consciousness expanded like a star going nova, touching realms of reality that had no names in any language ever spoken by organic beings. He was light. He was sound. He was the mathematical principles underlying the rotation of galaxies and the quantum fluctuations that gave birth to matter itself. Yet somehow, impossibly, he remained Marcus Kane, his memories, his personality, his essential self preserved within this ocean of infinite awareness. Marcus, the voice came from everywhere and nowhere, familiar and beloved despite the alien harmonics that colored every syllable. Zara. Relief flooded through him as her consciousness touched his, their minds merging and separating in rhythms that matched the fundamental frequencies of creation itself. You're here. You survived. We survived. She corrected, her mental voice filled with wonder. Look around us, Marcus. Look at what we've become. For the first time since the transition began, Marcus attempted to perceive his surroundings. What he found defied every assumption he'd ever made about the nature of reality. They existed in a space that was simultaneously infinite and intimate, filled with geometric patterns of pure thought that sang with voices of transcended consciousness. Other presences moved through this realm, vast, ancient intelligences that had once been the predecessor civilization. Their thoughts brushed against Marcus and Zara like gentle currents, carrying welcomes spoken in concepts rather than words. Welcome, unprecedented ones. Came a collective voice that seemed to emanate from the fabric of this dimension itself. You have accomplished what our models suggested was impossible, a bonded transcendence between species of incompatible neural architecture. Marcus felt Zara's consciousness pulse with excitement. Beside him, even in this transformed state, her scientific curiosity remained undimmed. How did we survive? The records indicated that only predecessor biology could withstand the transition. Individually, you could not have endured the process, the collective explained. But your emotional bond created a quantum entanglement between your consciousness patterns. The human's neural plasticity provided adaptive flexibility, while the Nexaries inherited genetic memories of our people, supplied the necessary structural frameworks. Together, you became something new, a hybrid consciousness capable of existing in multiple dimensional states. Marcus explored this new form of existence, marveling at the way thoughts and emotions took on geometric shapes in this realm. His love for Zara manifested as spiraling helixes of golden light that intertwined with the silver streams of her affection for him. Their bond had become visible, tangible, a living structure that anchored them both in this sea of pure consciousness. Time moves differently here, Zara observed, her awareness touching concepts that would have taken years to explain in conventional language. We've been in transition for microseconds in the physical realm, but we've experienced subjective hours of exploration. The nature of consciousness transcends temporal limitations. The collective confirmed. In this state, you can perceive the past and future as spatial dimensions to be explored rather than linear progressions to be endured. But you must choose quickly. Your physical forms remain in danger, as if summoned by their concern. Images from the material world filtered into their awareness. Through quantum resonance with their abandoned bodies, they could perceive the chamber where Elder Nyx struggled to maintain the transcendence platform against Rylos' increasingly desperate attacks. The mercenary captain had brought heavy weapons to bear on the ancient machinery. His scarred face twisted with rage as he realized his prize was slipping away. Shut it down. He screamed at his technicians. I don't care if you kill them, no. One else can be allowed to access this technology. He'll destroy everything. Zara's consciousness pulsed with distress. 50,000 years of accumulated wisdom, and he's willing to obliterate it rather than let others benefit. Marcus felt his awareness expanding, touching systems and processes throughout the ancient complex. In his transcended state, he could perceive the quantum mechanisms that powered the predecessor technology, understand their operation with intuitive clarity that would have taken lifetimes to develop through conventional study. We can stop him, Marcus realized, his thoughts taking on the crystalline structure of absolute certainty. The Transcendence platform isn't just a gateway, it's connected to every system in the complex. From here, we can control the entire installation, but that would require returning to physical existence, the collective warned. The transition back is even more dangerous than the ascension. Most who attempt to return to material form are destroyed by the compression of consciousness back into neural tissue. Marcus felt Zara's mind touch his, their bonded awareness sharing a moment of perfect understanding. They could remain here, safe in this realm of pure thought, exploring dimensions of reality that material beings could never comprehend. Or they could risk everything to return to a universe of limitations and dangers, armed with knowledge that might change the course of galactic civilization. The choice is ours, Zara said, her mental voice steady despite the magnitude of what they contemplated. We could stay and become part of the collective, adding our perspectives to theirs. Or we could return and try to bridge the gap between transcended and material existence. What does your heart tell you? Marcus asked, though he already knew her answer. Despite the wonders surrounding them, Zara's scientific passion burned as brightly as ever. She wanted to share these discoveries with her people, to ensure that the predecessor's legacy of growth and exploration continued. My heart tells me that love isn't meant to be hoarded, she replied, her consciousness wrapping around his like a warm embrace. What we've experienced here, what we've learned, it's too precious to keep to ourselves. Then we return, Marcus decided, feeling his awareness begin to contract as he prepared for the agonizing compression back into material form. Together, Zara agreed, and their combined will triggered the reversal sequence. The process was indescribable, like trying to pour an ocean into a teacup, forcing the infinite expanse of transcended consciousness back into the biological neural networks of their original bodies. Marcus felt himself fragmenting and reassembling. His sense of self scattered across multiple dimensions. Before snapping back into the familiar limitations of flesh and bone, he gasped, his lungs burning as they remembered how to process oxygen, his heart hammering against his ribs as blood resumed its circulation through mortal vessels. Beside him, Zara convulsed as her own consciousness settled back into its biological housing, her bioluminescent markings blazing with residual energy from their journey beyond the veil. But they weren't unchanged. Marcus could feel new pathways. In his mind, quantum connections that linked his awareness to systems throughout the complex. Knowledge flowed through him, not the overwhelming torrent of the transcended state, but a manageable stream of information that enhanced rather than replaced his human understanding. Impossible, Elder Nyx whispered, its form solidifying with renewed vigor. You have returned from the Great Crossing intact. In 50 millennia, none have achieved such a feat. Marcus struggled to his feet, helping Zara rise beside him. Around them, the ancient machinery hummed with new purpose, responding to their transformed consciousness. Through his enhanced awareness, he could perceive Rylos's weapons charging for a final assault on the Transcendence platform. Not today, Marcus growled, his hand finding the control interfaces with instinctive precision. The chamber filled with light as the full power of predecessor technology awakened. And Marcus Kane, no longer entirely human, but not yet fully transcended, prepared to defend the greatest discovery in galactic history. The ancient technology responded to Marcus's touch like a musical instrument recognizing its master. Through the quantum pathways now embedded in his consciousness, he could perceive the entire complex as a living entity, every power conduit, every defensive system, every fragment of accumulated knowledge waiting to be awakened after millennia of slumber. What in the void? Captain Rylos stumbled backward as the chamber walls erupted. With cascading patterns of light, the mercenary's cybernetic eye sparked and flickered. Overwhelmed by energy frequencies his augmented sensors couldn't process, Marcus felt Zara's consciousness brush against his, their bond stronger than ever despite their return to physical form. Through their shared awareness, they moved in perfect synchronization, her hands finding secondary control surfaces while his activated the primary systems. The orbital defense grid, Zara whispered, her golden eyes reflecting the data streams flowing through her enhanced mind. Marcus, this entire world is protected by technologies that make our most advanced weapons look like stone knives. Then let's remind our guests about the consequences of trespassing, Marcus replied, his voice carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before his transcendence. He gestured toward a crystalline interface, and somewhere high above the planet's surface, ancient satellites stirred to life through the complex's sensors. They watched Rylos's command ship, a brutal wedge of military-grade armor and weaponry, suddenly find itself locked in the targeting systems of defensive platforms that predated galactic civilization. Warning signals flooded the mercenary vessel's communications ray as weapons of incomprehensible power focused on its hull. Sir, the panicked voice of Rylos's ship commander crackled through the captain's comm unit. We're being painted by energy signatures our computers can't even classify. Recommend immediate withdrawal. Belay that order, Rylos snarled, his scarred face twisting with rage. I didn't come this far to be scared off by light shows and ancient parlor tricks. He raised his rifle toward Marcus and Zara. Whatever you've done to yourselves, it ends now. But before he could fire, Elder Nyx stepped between them, its form blazing with renewed vitality. Captain Rylos of the merchant vessel Carrion Crow. The Guardian's voice resonated with authority that made the chamber stones ring like bells. You stand accused of desecrating a sacred site, murdering peaceful researchers, and attempting to pervert the tools of transcendence into instruments of destruction. How do you answer these charges? I answer with plasma fire, Rylos growled, shifting his aim toward the ethereal being. His shot passed harmlessly through Nyx's energy-based form, but the Guardian's response was anything but ineffective. Light erupted from the ancient being's outstretched hand, enveloping the mercenary captain in a cocoon of luminous force that held him immobile, while leaving him completely unharmed. Violence has no power here, Nyx declared, its attention turning To the remaining mercenaries, this is a place of learning, of growth, of evolution beyond the crude limitations that drive your kind to warfare and exploitation. One by one, Rylos's men lowered their weapons, their faces reflecting the awe and terror of beings suddenly confronted with powers beyond their comprehension. The ancient technology surrounding them hummed with potential energy, making it clear that resistance was not just futile but potentially suicidal. Marcus felt a new presence entering his awareness, multiple presences. Actually, as ships began dropping out of hyperspace around Kepler-4 to see through the planet's sensor networks, he could identify the newcomers, vessels from the Galactic Council, their diplomatic transponders broadcasting urgent requests for communication. "It seems word of our discovery has spread," Zara observed, her enhanced senses reading the incoming data streams. 3 Council science ships, 2 diplomatic vessels, and she paused, her expression growing concerned. "Admiral Thorne's flagship. Marcus, they've sent a full task force." Admiral Thorne. Marcus knew the name from his years running cargo in the outer systems. The woman was a legend in the galactic military, known for her tactical brilliance and her absolute dedication to maintaining peace between the various species that comprised the Council. If she was here personally, it meant the implications of their discovery had reached the highest levels of galactic government. "Guardian," Marcus said, addressing Elder Nix with the respect due to a being who had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, "we need to establish communication with the Council ships. They need to understand what we've found here and what it means for every species in the galaxy." Nix nodded, its form beginning to fade as it prepared to expand its consciousness beyond the chamber. "The communication arrays have been dormant for 50 millennia, but they will answer to your combined will. Speak, and your words will reach across the void." Marcus and Zara approached the primary control interface together, their hands touching as they accessed the ancient communication systems through quantum entanglement and technologies that existed before most current species had achieved spaceflight. Their message reached the Council fleet in seconds. "This is Marcus Kane and Professor Zara Vex, speaking from the predecessor complex. On Kepler-4 to see," Marcus began, his words carrying across space with crystalline clarity. "We've made contact with the surviving guardian of this site, and we have information vital to the security and future development of all galactic civilizations." The response came from Admiral Thorne herself, her voice carrying the crisp authority of someone accustomed to making decisions that affected billions of lives. "Mr. Kane, Professor Vex, this is Admiral Thorne commanding the Council Exploration Fleet. We've received reports of transcendence technology and unauthorized weapons testing. Please explain your current situation." Zara leaned closer to the interface, her scientific training helping her organize the impossible complexity of what they'd experienced. "Admiral, we've made contact with technology that could revolutionize our understanding of consciousness itself. The predecessors developed methods for evolutionary transcendence, the ability to exist as pure awareness beyond the limitations of biological form. And we've successfully undergone the process ourselves," Marcus added, feeling the weight of that revelation settling over the listening fleet. "We've crossed the dimensional barrier and returned with enhanced capabilities and direct access to 50,000 years of accumulated knowledge." The silence from the Council ships stretched for long moments before Admiral Thorne's voice returned, carefully controlled but tinged with amazement. "You're claiming to have achieved functional immortality, to have transcended the biological limitations that define sentient existence." "We're claiming much more than that," Zara replied, her golden eyes meeting Marcus's as they shared a moment of perfect understanding. "We've proven that love, genuine emotional connection between consciousness, can bridge any gap, whether biological, technological, or dimensional. The transcendence process isn't about abandoning our physical nature, but about evolving beyond the limitations that keep us separate from each other." Through the chamber's viewing ports, they could see Council shuttles beginning their descent toward the planet's surface. Soon, the greatest minds in the galaxy would be studying predecessor technology, learning from Elder Nix's accumulated wisdom, and beginning to understand the true potential for consciousness evolution. But Marcus's attention was focused on the remarkable woman beside him, her bioluminescent markings pulsing in harmony with his own enhanced neural rhythms. Their journey had begun with a simple cargo delivery and evolved into something that would reshape the fundamental understanding of what it meant to be alive, to be aware, to be connected to the infinite mysteries of existence. "So what happens now?" he asked, squeezing her hand as council security teams secured the subdued mercenaries and diplomatic staff, prepared for the most significant first contact event in galactic history. Zara smiled, her expression reflecting the perfect contentment of someone who had found not just professional fulfillment, but personal completion. "Now we teach them what we've learned. We help them understand that consciousness isn't limited by biology, that evolution isn't constrained by species boundaries, and that love, genuine connection between aware beings, is the most powerful force in the universe." Marcus pulled her close, their kiss witnessed by ancient technology and beings who existed beyond the normal boundaries of space and time. Round them, the chamber hummed with activity as council scientists began the first tentative examinations of predecessor artifacts, while Elder Nyx prepared to share the accumulated wisdom of a transcended civilization. "I love you," Marcus whispered against Zara's lips, the words carrying harmonics that resonated through quantum dimensions. "And I love you," she replied, her consciousness touching his in ways that made physical intimacy seem like a pale shadow of true connection in this dimension and all others, for all time and beyond time itself. As the first representatives of galactic civilization entered the chamber, Marcus Kane and Zara Vex stood hand in hand, no longer quite human and Nexari, but something new and unprecedented. They had leaped through the void that claimed entire civilizations, survived what no alien species had ever dared attempt, and returned with proof that consciousness, love, and the courage to transcend